we are one of the top, I think, performing school districts in the state of Ohio, and we've had a long tradition of academic excellence for more than 100 years. We are economically and racially diverse, and we're located right outside of Cleveland, Ohio. We have about 5,500 students in 8 schools. And because of our proximity to major hospitals and universities, our families, they come from scores of different countries and speak a variety of different languages in Shaker. We also are a community and a district that has a rich history in the arts, and it's reflected in our curriculum as well as in our extracurricular activities. And we're globally focused. We just became one of 8 school districts in the nation to offer the International Baccalaureate program to all of our students, and that's all grade levels from pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. Our mission in Shaker is to nurture and educate as well as graduate students who are civic-minded and prepared to make ethical decisions, students who are confident and competent communicators, as well as individuals that are skilled in problem solving and are capable of creative thinking. And our vision at Shaker is really simple. I say it's simple, but it's also bold, and that is to be the first choice district or school district for all students, and that's both locally as well as around the world.
And as far as a teachers association within Shaker, we have been part of this rich tradition as well, and we've embraced wholeheartedly the new International Baccalaureate curriculum. We're excited to be one of these few schools that is IB accredited from K to 12. We are also the Shaker Heights Teachers Association, an independent group of teachers who collectively bargain and represent the teachers in the school district. We've been around since about 1983 when we discontinued our connection with the Ohio Education Association and became one of the few independents in Cuyahoga County. And that identity has left us with a positive, collaborative relationship with administration, where we really feel as if we are colleagues and peers in the most genuine sense with our central office and with our building administrators. It's definitely a relationship based on mutual commitment to the best for our kids and for our teachers and for our community and district as a whole. Something like 35% of our members actually live within the district and are committed not only as educators but also as parents to doing the best that we can for Shaker Heights City Schools. Likewise, there's a recent article, Greg, I don't know if you saw this, but we were listed as the 17th most educated communities in the country out of the top 100, wedged somewhere between Princeton, New Jersey, above us, and I want to say Berkeley, California, right below us. And that's really representative of our staff as well, highly educated, highly professionalized, an incredible number of course, master's degree, but also PhD teachers who really see their commitment in the classroom as, a lifelong vocation and have seen Shaker Heights City Schools as a destination for their profession. So that's a little bit of our background. It's really been a pleasure building a relationship with Greg as superintendent. Previously, we had a wonderful superintendent named Dr. Mark Freeman, who was superintendent in the district for 25 years and really was an integral part of the identity of the district. And he was savvy enough, and his school board was savvy enough to invite me to the national search process that interviewed the candidates for superintendent. So I was actually on the interview panel, alongside, city mayors and former and present city council members, board members, community activists, and in this committee, I had the opportunity to meet Greg and really see what a dynamic personality he has, and his really impressive, educational background, and his, tenure in Nashville and in Arlington, and, his education. So I think, from the ground up, I really had the opportunity to get to know Greg and to build that productive relationship. And then from that point, that continued, and Greg's really smart call to want to attend our monthly SHTA meetings and to, be a part of these organizational sessions that we have, building by building, to hear what building concerns are and to hear what, teachers are concerned about, and to answer questions openly and honestly with our representatives, to have them and me have the sense that he is vested from the ground running. Greg and I also have weekly discussions, telephone discussions, where we talk about the issues of that week, and have our eyes on the immediate goals and the immediate questions and concerns that teachers, parents, and administrators have, but also long-term. So that allows us to keep in touch consistently, between meetings organizationally that we have. I also have Greg's cell phone number. He has mine. If anything comes up, in the intervening times before we can talk, it's a 24/7 open line. And, I can go over to the central office building, or Greg could come over to the high school where I'm an English teacher, and we talk about issues that are immediately important from the get-go. So that is how we've built a productive working relationship, really from the ground up, from day one, I would say. And, I quote this often, but in his interviews, Greg said, if there's anywhere in the country that we can bridge the achievement gap, it'll be in Shaker Heights schools. He had me from there, and I want to be there for that day, and I have all the faith in the world that Greg can bring us there. So, that's really how we built this relationship, and how we will continue to build it.
And I would just have to, add to that. I think that initially we made the point to meet regularly just to get to know each other, because we didn't really know one another prior to my arrival, other than the time I saw you when I was on the interview panel. And one other piece that I just wanted to reiterate is the fact that our approach is that we never want surprises, and that's on both, that's both ways. I don't want the administration to surprise the SHTA, and the SHTA does not want any surprises from the administration. So that communication, I think, is so important, and we value that collaboration and the sharing of the ideas, because we truly believe, I know that I believe, that collaboration trumps conflict. And, we did have some barriers, and I know I had some coming in. For one, as John mentioned, Dr. Freeman was in the position as superintendent for 25 years. So I was stepping into, the seat of the superintendent after his tenure of 25 years and over 40 years in the school district. I call him like the godfather of education in the state of Ohio, because everyone knows Dr. Mark Freeman. And I was a newcomer, not only to Shaker Heights, but also to the state of Ohio. And another piece is that I was coming from Virginia, and I had experiences in Virginia as well as in Tennessee, which are right-to-work states. So I have not had experience working with collective bargaining units. So that was something that was new for me. And, I think it was in my favor, just because I didn't try to replicate something from another district. I knew what I knew best, and that was to collaborate and to sit down and have deep discussions about, any issues or conflicts or conversations. So I came in rolling up my sleeves and saying, hey, let's sit down and be able to meet and talk and collaborate. Another thing that I strive to do is have an open door policy, not just for the SHTA, but for all of our employees. in our district, and I think that is one way that has helped us to surmount some of the barriers that I had coming into this position. Well, I think that our relationship has been tested in a number of ways. I know when I arrived here in Shaker, we were initially supposed to go right into collective bargaining that year, and John and I decided to extend the collective bargaining for a year to give us time to, for me to get acclimated into Shaker Heights and into the position. And then for two, we were working on our 5-year strategic plan, and we believed that it was important for us to actually establish or develop the 5-year strategic plan prior to going into negotiations, which I think was a really great move for us because when we went into our last go-round of collective bargaining, we decided to approach the collective bargaining through a method called interest-based bargaining. And it allowed us to have a lot of collaboration around some of the district concerns, some of teacher responsibilities and SHTA members' concerns, administration concerns, Board of Education concerns, as well as community concerns about Shaker schools. And it allowed that two-way communication, which I think is so important in any relationship that you have. But I think that the IBB process, interest-based bargaining process, it really allowed us to bond and to see that we were more alike than different. It wasn't a us and them, it was a we, and we walked out of bargaining, collective bargaining, I think, as a team. I don't know if you would agree with that, John.
Such a strong suggestion to come out of this. Typically we negotiate a 3-year contract, and it's also very much dependent on a levy cycle. So we were really in between levy cycles, kind of confirmation of the strategic plan. We did this 1-year extension that Greg talked about that was successful, but everyone was very trepidatious because not only are we losing a 40-year, staff member and 25-year superintendent, we also have this 3 new members of a school board, a brand new, young, vital, energetic, I think 36-year-old at the time superintendent, this superstar from Nashville. And we're all, as members, I kind of joke about how much people love change. Of course, they don't love change. A lot of worry, and part of that worry was that this right-to-work mentality would be transmitted and kind of be a block to collective bargaining. But Greg, in opting to do interest-based bargaining, really was a stroke of genius because it allowed us to talk openly about each of the issues that we wanted to bring to the table through negotiations and not get bogged down in the, well, here's my proposal and there's yours proposal and how we were going to hash it out in between. We actually talked, as 8-people teams, and that dialogue is what brought us to a really strong not only contract, but also, as Greg mentioned, relationship. So that was, a master stroke. In the meanwhile, other barriers, the truth of it is this is one of the most difficult times in my 19 years as a teacher to be an educator. We have overwhelming testing demands in Ohio right now that it looks like we're going to be pulling back on. We've let go of the PARC test, and now we're going to AIR, and we're auditing the numbers of tests we're giving. We have constant budgetary concerns. And then historically we have in Shaker because we want the best for our kids in our community, and we implement programs like IB, but we also want to maintain, the best staff and programs. So there's a push and pull. We had a pretty profound disagreement about a disciplinary action in November at one of our schools where a child unfortunately went missing for a period of time. And that was, kind of a public conflict that we worked out successfully because we communicated, and we made the board meeting an open dialogue, and everything became transparent. We had another concern, and the other thing too, I mean, we can talk about the superintendent and you know, union president relationship, but we also are very aware of, you know, the impact of the school board. And when there's a 25-year vacuum where there's no new leadership from a superintendent, people know that the school board might want to redo things. So as much as Greg has the best intention and shows his merit, you know, as a collaborator, there was insecurity on the part of our membership in the new school board members. So in May at the high school, there's an open letter written to primarily the school board, but also central administration about our concerns about transparency and about the pace of change and about the scope of change. And we wrote an open letter, and it was, you know, signed off on by 98% of our membership at the high school. And Greg took that letter to heart, and we began very, you know, serious conversations after that point, and it was through his leadership and the president of the school board, Bill Clausen, to say, you know what, we're not going to let this go in the dark. We are going to have a public meeting on July 1st, and we had that public meeting, and it was 5 hours long, and we hashed out all of those issues. And, you know, for Greg to be as humble and as open and as non-defensive and as cooperative as he was, you know, was really a watershed moment in our relationship as an association and as central administration. I don't know if that meeting would have happened, you know, 5 years ago. But, you know, what seemed to be a potential negative really, or a potential barrier, really became a window of opportunity. And I think has strengthened our relationship, not only as individuals, but also as, you know, as elements of our community and our schools.
Yes, and I would have to just add that I think that was well said, and I totally agree with everything that you mentioned, John. I would also say that our Board of Education, they have been very courageous and open and willing to say, hey, let's have this public discussion. You know, it wouldn't have been possible for July 1 if our board president, President Clausen, if he wasn't open to saying, you know what, I want to bring our board members to the table, our SHTA members and our superintendent, and invite the public in to our space for us to dialogue and have this conversation to come up with solutions. And we actually walked out of that July 1 meeting with deliverables and objectives that we're all working on in different ways this upcoming school year to make Shaker even greater than it is. And the one thing I feel that, you know, I got out of the session on July 1 was the fact that we genuinely are a team and we're professionals. We are all valued. We're all respected. And it was an opportunity for us to really come together to realize, hey, we really do have a lot in common, and we're striving for the same things. And the number one thing is to ensure that 100% of our kids receive a high-quality education. And for our community to see the SHTA, the Board of Education, and the superintendent hand in hand having discussions, professional discussions, and, you know, intense at times. You know, it started off a little intense, but we walked out of the July 1 meeting saying, we are going to continue to work together. We are going to address our issues. We're going to have discussions around, you know, some of the concerns that we have in our district. We're not going to ignore them, and that everyone matters. Everyone's opinion matters, and that we're all accountable. So it's not a SHTA matter, it's not a Board of Education matter or superintendent matter. We're all accountable to make sure our students receive this quality education, and that was pretty remarkable to happen. So I don't know what other districts are even willing to do something like that. That we have been able to accomplish, but I think it says a lot about, you know, who we are. And you know, I say it time and time again, Shaker is a unique place in many ways, and that's just one of the ways that we are unique, that we're able to sit down at the table and to have deep discussions and to walk out a better team than when we arrived.
That's it. I mean, I think that's a big lesson from this whole experience, is that in times of change, if you dig in, and I think that's kind of a traditional view with superintendents and school boards, more to the point, and professional associations. Well, we're just going to stick to our side, and we're going to dig in, and we're going to keep our views to ourselves, and we're going to kind of create this iron curtain. That's when both sides lose, and we can't afford that, because ultimately the people who lose at the end of that are the students themselves. So instead of setting up that dynamic, we really broke some barriers. And we even had, a school board member said, well, are we going to do this every time? There is change in the district. And, my retort was no, because it's an incredible amount of work for both sides. But if we can lean into it during this time of change, it's going to benefit us in the long run. It's going to take away the necessity to have these kind of high tension meetings or high stakes interactions, when we all know we're all in it for the same reason. We're in it for the best of this school district. We're in it for the best of these kids. Instead of saying, well, we're going to draw back and kind of, get our various camps together for conflict, because that's really not what we're about. I mean, that's never been our intent as an association, and I know it's not the intent of the school board or the central office now. But you have to kind of bring those things to light for the community and for the greater membership as well, because they're all coming in with preconceived notions of what it means to be a teachers union or a teachers association, what it means to be a school board member or superintendent or a central office person. So you kind of have to disabuse the community of those preconceived notions too. We're not the private sector. There's so much transparency in the school budget. There's so much transparency in people's individual contracts and their job descriptions and what they're expected to do. I mean, we're not General Motors. We're not producing a static product. We're constantly shaping young lives, and we're the example of how a community should interact on these issues.
I agree. And with that said, I think it's important too, and one thing that came out of that July 1 meeting, we were able to define the role of our teachers, the role of our principals, the role of our superintendent, the role of the Board of Education. And there's a lot of crossover with that, but there are defined responsibilities that each of those entities have, and we need to make sure we make those clear so that people understand where we're coming from when we make specific decisions or we make certain comments. But I think all in all, everything that we've gone through this year, yes, we've had different tests, but I think that we have passed each test with flying colors, and we have bonded a lot more, and we are better for every challenge, every obstacle that we've had the past 2 years. I've been superintendent here in Shaker Heights, and I'm just looking forward to the future. And as you mentioned my quote earlier, if any place in this country or in this world is going to do it in regards to narrowing the achievement gap, it is Shaker Heights. And we have the competent employees, we have the resources, we have the supports from our community, and we have people who have vision, integrity, and passion. And because of that, we're going to be the gem of school districts across this country, rather all over the world.
I would say, as the president of the Shaker Heights Teachers Association, but also as a teacher and a parent, I realized how important it is to have open, transparent communications between the president and the superintendent, and how vital it is to start that from the top and not to let things lie in the dark or in the shadow. And when I have questions or concerns or rumors or misgivings, to communicate them as soon as possible. And what that allows is a genuine relationship that's not based on preconceived notions. And I've tried to convey that understanding to my association and my representatives at each building, to my executive board, to my officers, to my members, that we are not in a, and I said this before, we are not in a kind of segmented industry where, you know, one component does one thing and one component does the other. We don't operate in silos. We have to have open communications. We can never have an us versus them mentality or let that dictate our interactions, because at the end of the day, the people that we are seeking to help are our students, and they can't afford for us to have miscommunication and to have shadows and to have unexpressed worries. When we have to establish that trust. We have to take people at their best intentions, and when they show consistently that they're there to communicate and they're there to build the best district possible, that we take them at their word, and we trust them as colleagues and peers, and we move forward with that. So that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this, and I think, you know, it's what makes the teachers union or the teachers association so unique, is that, you know, we are not private sector. We are in the public. Everything is brought to light. Everything is public record. Everything is out there, and so we should act in good faith with our administrators and with our superintendents and with our school boards. And when there are points of disagreement, it's best to bring them forward as soon as possible, and to embrace dialogue and to embrace differing decisions, but also remain civil, and keep faith that we're both here, and both groups are here for the best of the community and for the students. So that's been, you know, a huge lesson, a huge takeaway for me, and that I look forward to this continued relationship and this continued open communication, and this continual improvement in the way that we operate as an association, alongside our peers in administration and in the superintendency.
And what I've learned, you know, from the working relationship with John is that maintaining relationships between the superintendent and any of our collective bargaining leaders is essential to the success of our school district or any organization. I also believe that having a relationship, it makes everything so much easier, and it allows you to get through the inevitable rough patches and disagreements that will most likely occur. Just at some point, if you never know when, but it will happen. Another thing that I learned is that just to maintain such relationships, there has to be two-way dialogue that must be honest, and it has to be courageous. And that relationships, they can only exist if two sides work together and they work as a team, which I think we've demonstrated, you know, these past couple of years with our relationship as superintendent at SHTA, president. And then finally, I just want to say that, you know, I think it's also a form of modeling for our students. You know, we want our students to collaborate, and we want them to be problem solvers, and we want them to work together. So we, as the adults and as the leaders of this organization, it is so important for us to walk the walk and to be that example for our young people, not only in Shaker Heights, but the children that are watching us every single day, as well as the adults, because we have to lead by example. So those are my major, you know, takeaways from the working relationship that John and I have, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow and to learn more, not only about John, but also about our district. And, you know, I'm ready for whatever comes our way, because I know that I'm not alone. I know that, you know, there's a team of us always working together to overcome any obstacle that we may have here in the district.